All right, so this is where we left off last time. I showed you different examples of the ones that I did. Every assignment that we turn in, we need to put our title bumper at the beginning of it, okay? So right now I have more than 5 transitions inside here. They're all labeled so that I know which ones are which. I need to get my title sequence into this project. So if I go to Import, and I go to, that's a new one, I don't think I've seen that. I'm going to go to File, and I'm just going to go find my title bumper, and just import that title bumper as a project. And I don't need to create the composition here, I'll do that after. Okay, so what this is going to do is everything, all the folder structure that was in the old one, it brings that into this one, okay? So I have a new folder right here. If I make that bigger, you can see it. There we go. And there we go. So there's Sarcona Title Bumper 001 AEP. If I open it up, I should see a similar folder structure to the one we already created, okay? So now that composition is inside, or that project is inside here. Now this is why we want to stay organized, because we have basically all the compositions from the previous one are inside this one. So if that one wasn't organized, then this one really isn't going to be organized because it's just like so much extra stuff. So I need to make sure that I go into my title sequence composition. You can see, boom, right there, title sequence. And I can double check it just to make sure that this is the one I wanted. Sean Sarcona, assignment 1, title bumper. Yep, that's perfect. Cool. And then, of course, I need to change the names, right? Because it's no longer assignment 1, it's now assignment 2. And it's no longer title bumper, it's page transitions. So I'm just going to grab my type in page transitions. And then go down to my title, or my assignment 1, and put in assignment 2. Okay, now everything else should work. Everything moves, perfect. I showed you before about adding an adjustment layer, so if I decided I wanted to change the color of this, I could definitely change the color too if I was so inclined to do that. I think I am going to go with the blue because I really like the other color that was there. Sweet. Okay, so I imported my project. Now my project is in there. I updated the name for the project name. I updated the assignment number. And then this is the part that is the truly magical part. I want to make sure that I grab the correct ones, okay, in the order that I'm going to sequence these. So After Effects will automatically sequence these one right after the other for me if I do this correctly. So the first one is going to be my title sequence, and then I'm just going to control click all my other page transitions that I have. So one is page transition basic, one is blip transition, one is radial transition, one is scale spin, comp 2, one is texture diagonals, and there's my 5. Okay, if you had 20 more, this process works exactly the same. You just grab them in the order you want to see them. Then I'd take that and drag it onto the new composition. And then After Effects will say, what do you want to do with this? I say I want to make a single composition. All my dimensions should be the same. Everything we've created so far is 960 by 540, so this should be irrelevant. I want to sequence the layers, and I don't want any overlap. And if we look now, you'll see it did exactly that. Now you're going to see I have a problem inside here. Maybe I do. Yep, right there, okay? So here you can see that there is a blue, you can't see it at all. Let me just make, let me make that more apparent so you can see it. There you go. There's something there. Okay, it looks hideous on my screen, but at least you can see it. Okay, so this hideous monster right there, which destroys basically everything back. I'll take this off before I actually render it. Okay, so it just blips away, right? It just goes, and the next animation comes in, all right? So this is the point of the page transitions, that we're never going to have something, well, not never, but typically you're not going to have something that ends with a blank screen and then something that comes on top of it, right? So if I had pictures, I typically wouldn't have a picture fade in, fade out, do a page transition, and then fade in, fade out again. That's not how it works. So what I can do is take this title sequence, and it doesn't matter where it is because right now they're all sequenced. It just has to be below the next one. And then what I'm going to do is I have a little bit of room here. I'm going to take this first page transition and bump it on top of that one. Now when I do that, it moves all the other ones or leaves all the other ones there. I don't want to do that. I'm going to grab all of them and scoot them all down to that marker. Okay? So what we should get now is this. There's my thing. Boop. So you see how it transitioned from my hideous vignette to that. And now each one of these goes from one to the next to the next. Cool. All right, so that's what your video should look like at the end. No weird abrupt changes, nothing like you saw a second ago. There's also good spacing, so this thing, when I hit play, it basically jumps right to the next one, right to the next one, right to the next one. I don't have anything like this inside there. And then we get to the next one. Okay? So make sure that whatever your comps are, I showed last time, cutting the comp and making sure that it's just, there's the page transition, a little bit of room on the end. Same thing here. Each one of these goes from nothing, that's why that works, to nothing again. And then they end right at the end of that bar, pretty much. Okay, like right before the end of that bar is where they end. Now at the very, very, very end of this right here, there is some black space. And again, we want to eliminate the black space there. So I'm going to go to the end of this. I'll hit the N key, so that goes to the work area. And then I'll do that same little trick of trimming the comp. Okay? So let me show this process again so you can see it, because you'll do this for literally every assignment from here on out. So I'm opening up my page transitions. There we go. At this point, you've already gone through and checked them all out, made sure that they're all, transparent at the beginning, transparent at the end, and covering the screen in the middle. I know which ones I want inside here. Okay, so there's all my page transitions. They're all chopped right to that end point. I go to Import. I find my file. I find my title bumper. I don't need to create the composition because we're doing that manually. Okay, and then I'm going to open up all my composition stuffs. I'm going to edit my title sequence. Wait till it gets big. There we go. Page transition. If you're not sure on your spelling, double check it. I don't think they haven't added a spell check to this. No, they have not. I think they would, but they haven't. And then this is assignment number 2. Okay, so I've updated my 2 names. I have my title sequence clicked first, and then I go through my list. Again, whichever order you want to select them in is up to you. Just make sure you're only grabbing the actual transitions, not the other stuff that we use maybe to build a transition. This, that. I'm grabbing an extra one because that one is also one I could use. Radial transitions one. Texture diagonals is one. Yep, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. I take that and drag it onto my new comp. Single composition. This shouldn't matter. Sequence layers. So there they are. And again, you can't see the ugliness of that. So I'm just going to go to right after this falls. Drag these into place. And then pull this one to the bottom. That way it goes right from one to the other to the other. Now if, for instance, let's say right here, this one was a bit longer, it's actually timed perfectly so that when it is covering the screen, that this one cuts out. Okay, so if this one cut out, let's say before that happened, just as an example, let's say it's just, that's how long it was, is right there. Then, oops. Then we would see that. So you can't see it still. I need a better projector. Let's use exposure this time and then just crank this up. There you go. You can see something. All right, so I'm going to go frame by frame so you can see this. So here it is coming in to cover it, cover it, cover it. And then right before it gets to the end, you can see how it goes to that black color, right? Now, it's not a huge thing because we're only seeing it one time, but we don't want that to happen, okay? So in the event that something like that does happen, you can't just go in here and stretch this out anymore. Like that's as big as this is going to get. If I go to Layer, Time, and I enable Time Remapping, then that lets me stretch this out, okay? So then I could make this as long as I need to. Now it still goes to black right after this little keyframe here. So what I have to do is I'm going to zoom in. And this is only if you have to do this part. This is not for everyone, just in case it doesn't line up right. Then I'm going to add a keyframe right before that one and delete that keyframe. We'll get into what we're actually doing, but that's what that does. Okay, so now if I go here, you can see that that end of this is as long as that needs to be. Cool. So now I can delete the exposure so we don't see that. Everything falls still, everything animates, everything looks beautiful. Oops. And I do want to cut this so that it doesn't show, the entire time. There we go. All right, so I go to the end of this one. I hit N to set my workspace, trim my comp. And there's something else I was going to do. That. There's no extra space. Those are all good. Oh, motion blur, right? So if there's any that don't have motion blur on them and I do want motion blur like this one, I'm going to jump back to this comp, turn my motion blur on, and then come back to that composition. Okay? So if you want motion blur on something, jump to the comp, hit it on, and then come back to this one. Turning it on here does nothing, okay? Because there's no motion on any of these things. The motion lives inside these compositions. So now that I'm all set with that, then I can go to Export Add to Render Queue. And I'll click on the word lossless. And I'll make this a QuickTime. I'll make sure that the format options are H.264, which they are. We don't have any audio. Remember, those are also on your little cheat sheet for 1900, so you can look at your 1900 cheat sheet, or 2200 if you have the older one. And then I'll click on the name, and I'll put this inside of my 1900 page transitions output. Sarcona page transitions. And then hit render. Now this is going to go relatively quick. Again, as we get further into this, this will go slower and slower and slower. Yes, ma'am. That would just go under your, like I keep it in my main folder. So like, let me show mine here. There, 1900 page transitions. So I just keep it right inside this main area. Okay. And then you can just save this project, boom. And then I don't know why I closed After Effects, so just start reopening it because I'm going to need it. And then once you have that done, then you're going to go to that. So you're going to go to your Z drive, you'll go to your 1900 folder. And you'll go to that, I always do it backwards, turn in page transitions. Okay, so you'll go to your turn in page transitions folder and drop your entire folder, boom, right inside there. Okay? Any questions on that process yet? Okay, they'll come up, I'm sure. Cool? They'll come up.